Imagine a single choke point, a narrow strip of water, barely 21 miles wide at its tightest, holding the entire global economy hostage. 20% of the world's oil passes through it every single day. And right now, as you watch this, that passage is still locked. Ships sit idle, fuel prices burn, and the world watches a diplomatic chess match play out in real time between Washington and Tehran. This is the story of oil, war, and a ceasefire that keeps being extended, but has yet to actually end anything. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched strikes against Iran, igniting the most significant military confrontation in the Middle East in a generation. Iran's response was swift and calculated. It effectively closed the Strait of Hormuz, the critical maritime corridor connecting Persian Gulf oil producers to the rest of the world. Global markets were rattled almost immediately. The US-Israel war on Iran triggered the steepest monthly oil price rise in recorded history, a staggering 50% in March alone. The energy shock that followed was not a simulation, it was not a projection, it was real, and it rippled into every corner of the global economy. Then came April 7th, just minutes before a deadline that Trump himself had set, threatening to bomb Iran back to the Stone Age if his demands were not met. A 2-week ceasefire was announced. The reaction was immediate and seismic. US West Texas Intermediate crude futures fell more than 16% to close at $94.41 per barrel, their biggest single-day decline since April 2020. International benchmark Brent crude dropped roughly 13%, settling at $94.75 a barrel. On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average surged more than 1,000 points. The S&P and Nasdaq rallied sharply, following strong gains in Asian and European markets. Trump said the US had received a 10-point proposal from Iran, which he called a workable basis to negotiate, and said the parties were very far along. The world exhaled, but the relief would prove premature. Within hours of that first ceasefire announcement, the cracks began to show. Tanker traffic through the strait did not resume. Ships remained anchored, their captains unwilling to risk the narrow waters still patrolled by Iranian forces. According to marine industry analysts at Lloyd's, while the ceasefire was welcome, it remained highly unlikely that trade into the Gulf would simply resume. Weeks passed. Peace talks were scheduled in Pakistan. Vice President J.D. Vance was prepared to travel to Islamabad, but then, nothing. Vance's trip was put on hold because Iran failed to respond to American negotiating positions, according to a US official with knowledge of the situation. And then, Iran walked away from the table entirely. Iranian state news outlet Tasnim reported that they would not appear for further talks, saying that under these circumstances, attending negotiations was a waste of time because the US was preventing any suitable agreement. Then, just hours before the 2-week ceasefire was set to expire, Trump moved the goalposts again. This time, it was indefinite. President Trump indefinitely extended the ceasefire with Iran at the request of mediator Pakistan, aimed at giving Tehran's leadership time. In a statement, Trump said, "Based on the fact that the government of Iran is seriously fractured, we have been asked to hold our attack." Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif thanked Trump for the extension, pledging continued efforts toward a negotiated settlement. Oil markets, however, barely flinched. Brent crude declined just 0.59% to $97.91 per barrel, while WTI lost 0.95%. The message from traders was clear. This ceasefire extension changes little. The blockade continues. The strait remains effectively closed. Here's what the numbers are actually telling us, and what most headlines are missing. Even with the original crash, crude remained well above its pre-war level of $67. The market has not fully priced in peace, because peace has not arrived. Brent crude remained inside a narrow range near $98 per barrel. Iranian officials reportedly believe that time is on their side. According to Thomas Matthews of Capital Economics, the latest announcement had little power to move markets further. Reopening of the strait remains the key flashpoint. And there's a deeper problem. Trump had agreed to the original ceasefire on condition the strait be fully reopened, but traffic stayed at a trickle. After peace talks failed, Trump ordered a US Navy blockade of Iranian ports near the strait. Iran calls that blockade a siege. An advisor to Iran's speaker called the extension a ploy for a surprise strike, saying the naval blockade was no different from bombardment. You might be watching this from a city far from the Persian Gulf, but make no mistake, this crisis is already in your wallet. In the United States, national gasoline prices have risen above $4 per gallon. Shortages will ripple if the strait doesn't fully reopen. Airlines are quietly absorbing fuel surcharges. Shipping costs are elevated. Inflation in energy-sensitive industries is creeping back. And governments from Seoul to Berlin are quietly recalculating their energy security strategies. The Strait of Hormuz is not just a geography problem, it is an economic lifeline. And right now, it is still not fully open. So where do we go from here? The ceasefire has been extended, but it is a ceasefire in name only. The blockade remains, Iran's government remains divided, peace talks have stalled, and oil is hovering just below $100 a barrel. The question the markets are asking, the question every energy importer is asking, is not whether there will be a deal. It is when and at what cost. Trump says he has all the time in the world. The global economy is not so patient. If a deal is struck, expect oil to drop and markets to surge. If talks collapse and war resumes, brace yourself. Crude hit $117 last time. The world is watching a narrow strip of water, and right now, that narrow strip of water is watching the world right back. Stay informed, stay ahead. And if this analysis helped you understand what's really happening, you know what to do.